Serious, what severely fucked you up and left you traumatized? Raped by a close family friend that was also a cop at the time. When I was 15, it's several years later, he's been in court for child luring 2 different girls, and now he's probably gonna get off on it unless new evidence is brought up. I now feel obligated to make a statement and it's terrifying. I can't handle being around police officers or tall, bald men. Edit, thanks to some very kind people, I've contacted my local authorities. I guess I'm really doing this. Second edit, thank you to whoever gifted me gold, you're really too kind. Responded to a 8-year-old girl who had been raped by her mother's boyfriend. That was horrific. Then responded to the same girl 5 months later when the foster mother she had been placed with beat her half to death. I fucking hate people. Rape and physical abuse from ages 6 to 14. It was someone who babysitted me, a family friend. I understand the situation was extremely difficult and hard, but when I finally told my mom at 15, she said I was just trying to get attention. The fact that my own mother doesn't believe me hurt me, and now we never talk. I spend all my time at school, and try to be the perfect child so I can escape to college and leave everyone behind. Burying my stillborn daughter. I have 2 beautiful children now, but I went through 18 months of severe anxiety and depression, postpartum psychosis and hallucinations. It fucked me up because even now, I fully expect the fates to take away another child. That baby girl, she's a tear that hangs inside my soul forever. When I was 7, I saw one of my good friends laying on the side of the road face down and blood coming from his head, killed in a hit and run. Remember coming back from Toys R Us, who I was with, what shoes my friend was wearing and everything. Edit, I didn't think this would get any attention. My friend was hit trying to get the mail, I believe. As we drove by I was like, Ma, that was Timmy. I recognize his shoes. He had some awesome black Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Velcro shoes that I wanted. Honestly, I had rarely ever thought about the event until many years later when an uncle has suddenly passed. Brains are weird. Being told I was worthless, nothing and will get nowhere by my whole family. Did prove them wrong, but still. The scars never show the depth of the wound. Edit, wow, my first gold. Thank you so much, kind stranger. My brother had open heart surgery and afterwards had a chest tube put in. When the nurse came in to drain the fluid, it put him in absolute misery. He screamed and cried during the entire duration of it. He was this tiny little 9-year-old sitting there in so much pain and there was nothing I could do to help him. Not even the heavy medication could take the pain away. I have a lot of nightmares now. Usually it's him being raped or being skinned to death, but it's the same screams from the hospital. When I was 25, a guy hanged himself in my workplace. I was the first person to see his body. His skin was blue and his tongue was sticking out. I still think about it every now and then. Edit, for context, this guy wasn't very popular. Nobody hated him, exactly, but no one really enjoyed his company. He was from Europe and had zero in common with me and my other co-workers. He worked in this finance-type role and was a huge hardass about the budget. We had to defend every dime we spent, and he didn't even try to hide the fact that he thought all of us were a waste of time and money. As for his motive, it turned out he was kind of a hypocrite. Apparently he embezzled a bunch of cash from the firm a week before Christmas. He ran into money trouble and decided to forge checks to steal what he needed. When he got caught, he couldn't handle the consequences or the shame, so he hanged himself. The only suicide note he left was a boilerplate resignation letter. I didn't like the guy, but we were all pretty shaken up by it. Being home invaded, zip-tied and tasting what the barrel of a gun tastes like. Never did get therapy and I know the experience has never left every other thought I have. My last dog was viciously attacked by another dog because the woman walking it was too busy with her phone. It pulled away from her and attacked my dog for no reason. It ended with a lawsuit and her dog being put to sleep. My dog needed stitches but he survived the attack. Dog walks went from being an enjoyable activity to a thing of dread. I am constantly looking around for stray or loose dogs. If I see one I immediately pick my dog up and I'm sure it makes me look a little insane to my neighbors but I panic. Thanks lady, too busy with your phone. I'm sure this isn't going to be nearly as bad as the other stories on here, but when I was 9 or 10, my mom, sister and I were leaving Vaughn's and we saw 3 younger men, in their 20s, just viciously beating up a 60-plus-year-old man, kicking him on the ground, nearing him, punching and all. Then their mom pulls up in her car, clearly seeing what was happening, got them in the car and drove away before the police got here. Why did it leave me kinda fucked up? 1. People were eating outside watching and not one of them called the police despite sharing the account that they just attacked the older guy. 2. Their mom helped them get away, which is essentially condoning what they did. Obviously a better parent would have left them to deal with the police. 3. It was unprovoked on a fucking 60-year-old who was essentially defenseless against 3 large younger males. Got woken up by my father knocking frantically at my door. He came home to find my mother lying in bed without a pulse but still warm, and panicked, not knowing what to do. I almost lost it too, but managed to call for emergency service. Alas, she didn't make it. She suffered from kidney failure and was on dialysis for at least 10 years. Patients dying in the sleep were quite common, at least in my part of the world. The event left me a little wrong in my head. Nowadays my heart rate would spike and I feel cold whenever someone knocks on my door, especially the people with the habit of rasping the door in a very rapid manner. That always puts me on edge. When I was in 3rd grade and my brother was in 1st, we shared a room. One night we were both watching The Lion King and we heard screaming from the living room. We didn't really do anything or get nervous because our older sister always got into a fight with our mom. When we heard my big brother telling my mom to stop, I got nervous. I turned the volume up on the TV so my little brother couldn't hear the yelling because he started to get scared. I told him that everything was going to be fine and I went outside the room. I saw my sister grabbing my mom's arm trying to get a broken wine bottle out of her hand. She tried to kill herself. My big brother was trying to get my mom to calm down. I seriously can never forget that day. I just remember standing there frozen seeing the broken glass and my mom crying and begging my sister to let go. I didn't know what to do and honestly I don't remember what I did afterwards. I just know that I didn't let my younger brother out of the room. I still have nightmares about it 12 years later. A bit of a backstory. When I was 12, a friend's grandmother used to watch me before and after school. Grandmother was in her 50s to 60s at the time. My mother raised me Mormon and these people all went to our church. At the time, I had just lost the only father figure I had. I was depressed and near suicidal. I was also discovering that I not only did not believe in the Mormon church, but I disliked the church and the people in it. Needless to say, I was rebelling. However, at that time I was still a good kid. I was just sad and extremely confused. My mom was a single mom. Her and my dad divorced before I was born. My dad wanted a boy. When my mom found out I was a girl, he went on record in court that he didn't want anything to do with me. To this day, that is still a sore spot for me. Now this grandma was mean and hateful to her core. She would talk crap about me and make fun of me behind my back and talk bad about my mom. Her granddaughter would tell me it all. One day, the grandmother and I got into a disagreement. I don't remember what about, but I was calling my sister to pick me up. This grown-ass woman looks 12-year-old me in the face and says if I was your father, I wouldn't want anything to do with you either. Tried to kill myself that night for the first time. To this day I still can't forgive her. It's the single most hateful thing anyone has ever said to me. My biological mom was a drug addict when I was growing up. She would lock me and my little sister in the room when she would get high. She would shut us in there and tell us not to come out until she came for us. There was one day when I was 4 that she locked us in and didn't come back for us. My sister was younger than me and she started crying after a while. I can remember wanting to help her but not knowing how. My mom's boyfriend eventually came over and found her unconscious laying on the floor. He let us out of the room and I just remember seeing her body laying lifeless on the floor and being so confused. He tried to not let me see, but I saw her anyway. She ended up surviving, but we were removed from the home. My sister and I were both adopted by amazing parents, who later adopted again, but that memory stuck with me. I am doing fine overall. I am graduating from high school this year and am part of National Honor Society. I played sports throughout high school. I still have issues with abandonment. Sleeping by myself still scares me. I am lucky enough to have a brother close in age who doesn't mind sharing. I have a hard time believing that someone loves me. I have a girlfriend and I know she loves me, but I still question it at times. I also am afraid to try drugs and alcohol, so I am nervous about starting college. It's just a bunch of small things that make up my everyday life. Mom asking me if Nana molested me too. I lost my virginity and experienced bondage when I was 4. I'm 22 now and ruined for life. Throwaway account, because I'm going to lay it all out. Something happened when I was a young kid that gave me a serious stutter that took 8 years to overcome. Narcissistic, schizoid mother who turned me into Cinderella. There is no prince. Schizophrenic brother who used to wake me up by punching my head. Learning to swim by being thrown in the water and dragged out by our hair by somebody's drunk uncle. I was not the only one. The first husband got such a traumatic brain injury that he became a different, and dangerous, person. Raped by a friend. Severe poverty, the whole time. As in, yes, I ate dog food for the protein and picked maggots out of the rice. Multiple concussions. In an abusive relationship, more like a hostage situation. Second husband discovered that alcohol was more important than anything. Near-death experience. Sudden seizure. The realization that it took me 20 years to overcome all the shit that my first 30 gave me. Maybe I shouldn't be so hard on myself for not accomplishing much. I'm now healthy, employed, and loved. Considering all that happened, that's a miracle. Fraternity pledging. Constant state of anxiety, paranoia, degradation, ridicule, humiliation, physical hazing, eating, drinking, physical punishment, psychological hazing, etc. People who support it call it bonding with your pledge brothers. It's not. It's literally torture. Edit. For those that might not know what goes into it, imagine weekly lineups where you would have to black out the windows, and for 3 to 6 hours, the longest ones were full days. Think reporting at 2 p.m. and finally leaving at 2 a.m., being forced to be in the push-up position for hours, being kicked, pushed down, gross shit poured on you, singled out and yelled at by the entire fraternity, who all get together, observe and drink while these lineups happen, while being forced to eat gnarly shit like a dip dog, a stick of butter and a hot dog bun with a can of dip on top, and when you inevitably start to throw that up within minutes, being physically forced to throw up on the pledge brother next to you. Most of these involve wearing swim goggles that have been duct taped over, so you can't see for the majority of these experiences, which makes it even more disorienting/claustrophobic. This was just one of the types of lineups we had. They would always change the type, length, even day of the week if they were held on. You would just get a text an hour or two before, meet with your pledge brothers and be at the house at 5 p.m. That could happen any day, any time. My last relationship. My ex put a restraining order on me for 3 months after lying under oath. As a physically fit, outgoing person I am embarrassed to admit, but the lingering effects still mess with me on a near daily basis. Everything from interactions with some of my best friends, to work, and even my hobbies. For some reason, even though she lifted it and I'm a free man, I still feel a slight amount of fear at the thought of her showing up somewhere unexpectedly. Being turned down by 6 career opportunities really fucks with you. Seeing a photo of a woman shitting into another woman's mouth when I was a teenager. I shot a squirrel once. There's a banana tree in our backyard, and my sister noticed a squirrel hanging out on its trunk. She told me to use a bow and arrow to scare it off, and I did, except I was using the sharpest arrow in the quiver, and for whatever reason, I decided to aim at the poor critter. The tree shakes, my sister yells "Oh my God," and the squirrel falls from the tree. I thought it was over at that point. Turns out, it wasn't. The squirrel was still alive, even though the arrow had pierced laterally, right through its neck. It tried to run off, but the arrow got caught between a wall and a bush. At this point, my other 2 brothers came out and saw what was going on. My older brother went back inside, and returned with the BB gun in his hands. He loaded it, and he aimed it at the critter. But I told him I should be the one to do it. So I took the gun from his hand, and aimed down the sights. The rifle still had the scope on, and it was impractical at point blank range, so I spent some time screwing it off. I looked over at the squirrel, and it was still trying to run. In fact, it kept flipping over the arrow shaft like a gymnast, only punctured at the point on its neck. It was really frantic. Finally, I rose the gun, took aim, and fired at its head. The squirrel jolted and tried to scamper away, and a new blood streak was running down the side of its face. I loaded the gun, aimed, and fired again. I took out an eye this time. Same frantic reaction as before. Then, for the third and last time, I reloaded, aimed, and fired once more. The squirrel did a spectacular front flip around the shaft of the arrow, and then it landed on its back, its little arms raised in the air like a gymnast completing its run. They twitched for a little while, and at last, the critter went still. I buried it on the edge of the backyard. My brothers tried to make jokes about it, but I didn't speak at all. After all, it was my fault something so small and innocent had its life taken away. I was traumatized for the rest of the day. My father, who passed away last year, has suffered from cancer for years. I was with him when it happened. I was 16 years old, and was taking care of him, alone. Our family was on the other side of the country, holding his hand. I tried to help him but I could not, and when the ambulance arrived he had already died more than half an hour ago. It was not a quiet death, and I still see the scene every day repeating itself before my eyes when I go to sleep. I never felt so helpless. My mom. Her rage and verbal abuse when I was kid still messes me up to this day. It's because of her that I'm hesitant to approach women. I'm a really nice guy, which I know screams bullshit to people on here, but I really am, because I assume that rage is in all women and I do my best to avoid it. I suck at flirting and fear that I will say something that will offend. I was terrified of her and hate her now. When I was very young, I had this babysitter. She had a daughter, around the same age as me. One day she came running out from her bathroom post-bath. She was completely naked, and here's what messed me up for a very long time in my young life. She had a penis, and her mother just told her to tuck it in. This confused the hell out of my young mind on female anatomy. Then, internet porn came around and fixed it for me. Being told that my child had cancer, having to watch my 6-year-old daughter go through chemotherapy and radiation, trying to explain to her what cancer is and that she did nothing for it to happen, having to literally hold her down while the doctors poked and prodded her all while she was crying and asking me why, watching her deteriorate right in front of me, holding her up over a toilet to throw up since she was too weak to stand, having to make a decision on treating her at the cost of her long-term quality of life. Luckily she is currently in remission but has too much of an understanding of mortality at 7 years old. You can tell she has lost the majority of her childhood innocence. Still constantly questioning if I could have done more to prevent it, or if she might relapse, but mostly just grateful she is still here. We were driving home from dinner, laughing. The light is green and I think I see a flash of something ahead. We enter the intersection and I realize that what I saw was a homeless man stumbling across the street. I scream and instead of slamming on the brakes, my friend who is driving looks over at me. He sees the man, slams on the brakes, cuts the wheel, turning the passenger side toward the pedestrian just as he realizes that we are going to hit him. His face, oh my God, the look on his face, and he was so close to me. And by some miracle we didn't hit him, we missed him by inches. We pulled over in shock and cried for a few, then he dropped me off at home. Problem was, my mind did not understand that we did not actually hit or kill the homeless man. I would have flashes of my friend and I sitting on the curb, body in the road covered with a bloody sheet over it. I see myself talking with the police. I convinced myself that I was experiencing the denial part of the grief process of ending someone's life. I still have flashes of what my brain thinks should have happened but didn't. It haunts me. We didn't kill him, but I see the images and feel the feelings as if we did. I've had worse things happen to me in my life, but nothing has traumatized me more than seeing the face that man made before he died. I came up on a car accident one morning on my way to work. There were no police or medical people there yet, so it was obvious that it just happened, or happened earlier, and the tow truck hadn't came to pick the car up. As I got closer I saw that a vehicle was totally destroyed and overturned but couldn't tell what it looked like. I slowed down until I got parallel with it and saw one of my good friends hanging upside down in the car, in obvious terrible pain. Jumped out of my truck and stayed with him until he was life-flighted to a nearby hospital. He had fallen asleep on the way home from a third shift job and drove off the road into a concrete culvert. He ended up just having scrapes and bad bruises. Now every time I see a car accident I assume it's one of my friends. I watched Saving Private Ryan once or twice a day for about half a year at age 6 while locked in my babysitter's basement. I'm basically completely desensitized to violence and gore now. I watch videos of people being gravely injured and killed just to pass the time. It also took about a decade for me to stop using violence as my first response to any opposition. The movie Grave of the Fireflies. Seeing my mother in the wreck of a car. She survived, but that phone call was terrifying. Drove there as fast as I could, hopped out of my car, ran a quarter-mile down the highway to find her. Seeing all of the cops and firefighters pull her out of the wreckage onto a stretcher really fucked me up.